Hello and welcome to this AMBA and BGA webinar on the State of Credentialing survey report findings and insights in association with Accredible. I'm looking forward to an hour of really interesting insights, and shortly I will hand over to our speakers, Laura Scruggs, Senior Director of Marketing at Accredible, and Rochelle Ramirez, Senior Vice President of Product at Accredible. Before I do, some housekeeping. We want the session to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions at all, just add them to the question box for us to answer. If you miss anything, don't worry, because the recording and slides will be available in post-event comments and on our website within a week. Without further ado, I will now hand over to Laura and Rochelle.
Many thanks for having us. We are thrilled to be here today. And before we get started, we'd love to hear from you all about the state of your institution, the state of your school, the state of your programs. Rochelle, my colleague, is going to cover a lot today. And one of those takeaways is about digital badges, sometimes in the form of digital certificates or microcredentials. So we'll launch a quick poll now. And tell us, if you will, are you currently offering some form of digital credentials to your students? Maybe you're leveraging digital credentials university-wide. Maybe you're offering them just through a couple of different programs, or maybe not at all yet. And we'll see some interesting results come in so far. And it's all great to note, as we'll be kicking off with some very important insights for organizations at each of these different phases of adoption. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Rochelle, to dive right in.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, guys. As mentioned, I'm Rochelle Ramirez, and I am the SVP of Product at Accredible. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you to discuss this year's State of Credential report and how it impacts business education programs like all of yours. So if you are unfamiliar with Accredible, we're the world's leading digital credential platform, enabling education and training leaders to increase student engagement, to grow their programs, and connect continuing education to meaningful career outcomes. More than 2,300 organizations rely on Accredible to manage and measure everything from issuing digital certificates and badges to visualizing learning pathways and even spotlighting students and alumni. Over the past decade, we've all witnessed the labor market and post-secondary education landscape fundamentally change. Learners are exploring new and different avenues like certificate programs, boot camps, or short online courses to supplement degrees or gain new skills. And employers are expanding their hiring practices based on skills and learning, not solely on degree completion, to fill their skill gaps and create a more diverse workforce. So if you think about it, verifiable proof of skills has truly become a new currency. And even with this market momentum, credential issuers are under increasing pressure to demonstrate the value and relevance of their credentials to stakeholders. And with seemingly endless options in the market, how can institutions differentiate themselves and earn a student's time and investment? So this is why we surveyed over 1,000 learners and nearly 200 education leaders that are credential issuers to see what learners want from their courses and credentials, how well programs are meeting those expectations, and what the most successful issuers are doing differently to grow their programs. So if you're starting on your credential journey, or like many struggling to get funding or support to expand your credential initiative, this report really has some great insights for you. So what did we learn? We learned so much. Organizations and institutions really do have a massive opportunity in front of them. More than 9 out of 10 learners are planning to take more courses, specifically those that offer a credential in the next 2 years. They're actively looking for recommendations from their course providers, But as we'll see here shortly, they're really, if ever, receiving any. Put more broadly, there's a significant gap between what learners want in their courses and what programs are delivering. So let's really dive into some of these findings so that we can fill that gap. So first, students highly value digital credentials for career development. We found that 96% of learners who earned a digital credential consider it valuable for their career, and 78% believe it increases their chance of getting a job offer. I'd like to share with this slide a quick story from a Penn State finance student we met through one of our webinars. He shared how earning digital badges through McGraw-Hill's SimNet platform has really made a difference. He told us, having these badges on LinkedIn and my resume means that in almost every interview, someone notices and asks me to elaborate. I'm not just claiming I have Excel skills. These badges actually prove it, because we all claim that we have Excel skills. So this is exactly the value we all offer, showing exactly how someone is qualified by highlighting their skills and abilities. And this helps them advance in their career and land ultimately great job opportunities. So while the high percentage of learners valuing digital credentials is great news for the industry and helps learners connect skill development with career outcomes, higher education leaders and technology partners like Accredible still need to better educate students on the true value of digital credentials. We're admittedly a little biased. We were initially surprised to learn that learners don't have instant preference for the type of credential they receive. When asked what type of credential they would like, the most popular format was digital credential, but not by a large margin at all. In fact, 1 in 4 had no preference. However, once we dug into what attributes of a credential are most important to learners, we discovered that they have a strong preference for features really only digital credentials can provide them. They want credentials that are verifiable and protected against fraud and tampering. They want credentials that can easily be recovered if they get lost. They want credentials that are definitely easy to share online, and they want credentials that contain metadata or data, including an overview of acquired skill, evidence of what was learned and assessed, criteria for entry and earning on the credential. And it's easy to understand why they want this. Employers want to look at a digital badge or certificate and understand clearly what it tells them about the student's competency, the quality of the education they received, and the skills they have proven they have. So being able to communicate these things with employers is necessary to realize the value of credentials in the market. So what can we do first? First, add as much relevant metadata as you can to your credentials. So here, Syracuse University is a fantastic example of an issuer maximizing metadata. So shown here on the screen is an example of their credentials. And each credential has a detailed description of the course or workshop, cluing employers into what exactly the student learned. It's tagged with specific skills and knowledge that the recipient gleaned from the course. It shows the students themselves how and where to share. It clearly displays a verification badge, the issue date, the expiration date, and then it also links to more information about the school and its curriculum so people can find more information. Secondly, after your metadata is in place, you'll want to focus on educating your learners. So why should they care about digital credentials? Make it clear what your credentials mean for students' careers on your program pages and in credential delivery emails. Share stats on how digital credentials have helped learners advance their careers. Shout out students who share their credentials on LinkedIn. Add short videos or testimonials from learners who used credentials in their job search. Explain digital credential security features to emphasize their trustworthiness in the market. Provide tips for incorporating digital credentials in job applications and in their professional profiles. The American Council on Exercise, or ACE, is a great example of an organization that does this well. An example of them is on the screen. The value of its credentials is front and center on its program pages, and each section gives learners even more reason to accept and share their badges. So, from these insights comes our first takeaway. We found that the most successful issuers are not just issuing digital credentials, but they're also educating their learners on the value of digital credentials when pursuing their career goals. So, before we move on to our second insight from the report, I'd love to zoom back out and learn a little bit more from our audience about the top challenges that you're facing as we go into 2025. So, we'll launch another brief poll now. Tell us what your top priority is for next year. Is it driving enrollment and program revenue, improving your course content, keeping students satisfied, or even engaging on a deeper level with your alumni and communities? So, very cool. We have some answers coming in. All right. How are we looking, ladies? Beautiful. All right. So let's see. The top ones we have right now are building program awareness and enrollment and revenue growth, and then optimizing courses based on student and employer demand. That is excellent. It's great because we are going to talk about some of those insights coming up really shortly. So let's move on to our second insight because we'll start to get into some of those topics specifically. As we noted earlier, the majority of learners plan to take more courses after they complete one. So that said, we also discovered that in many cases, what learners would like to see in their courses doesn't always align with what the programs are providing. For example, we found that 97% of learners, when evaluating learning options, want learning pathways of linked modules or courses to help them master a topic or skill. Yet, only 29% of credential issuers provide them. Similarly, 92% of learners report wanting projects or assessments as part of their coursework, yet only 34% of issuers are offering. So this presents clear and significant opportunities for programs to adapt to these specific learning preferences. So, as an example, we can look at a successful education publisher like McGraw-Hill who incorporates digital badging into comprehensive learning pathways. So those pathways can include a project or an assessment and are designed thoughtfully to keep students engaged and guide them to a specific competency. McGraw-Hill personalizes the learning experience by assessing a student's existing knowledge prior to the course of study, and then guide them through targeted learning lessons based on those results. From there, they assess the learner along the way to track their individual progress. And they found that this makes learning more efficient and effective for everybody. Students know exactly what skills they need to acquire, and then they can track their own progress along the way. UiPath here is another great example. They're a global AI and automation leader. You can see here they clearly outlined each pathway requirement, allowing learners to choose between several different courses and even optional courses to suit the student's specific needs. So, and then pairing courses with hands-on projects and assessments within structured pathways allows for a flexible, comprehensive learning experience that builds skills progressively through interconnected microcredentials. So that leads us to takeaway 2. The most successful programs align their offerings with their learners' expectations by incorporating elements like learning pathways, projects, or assessments, that hands-on learning, and tracking learner engagement metrics to optimize their course offerings. All right, so that brings us to our third insight. And we've certainly seen this firsthand at Accredible. Digital credentials not only recognize learner achievements and meet their credential preferences, but they can also unlock a powerful organic marketing channel when issuers empower students to share their credentials online. This ultimately boosts your brand awareness and program referrals. In fact, 94% of organizations who have adopted digital credentials report a positive impact on their business, with the biggest benefit cited as increased credential sharing online. And right, that's huge, 94%. There are some studies recently that have come out in our industry that are talking about the top way new learners find programs. And they indicate the second most common method is still word of mouth, so through peer-to-peer relationships. So I'm going to pose a rhetorical question, no poll or anything, just rhetorical. Think about your lives today and your interactions every day in your work life. Where do most peer-to-peer recommendations take place for you? I know in my personal life and a lot of my peers' personal lives, that is through social media. And that is why giving students and alumni the ability to easily share credentials on channels like LinkedIn is so important. It's not just a way to boost the credibility of the learner themselves, but it's also one of the most effective ways to boost your own brand awareness. Now, despite the positive impacts being reported, many credential issuers also report increasing credential sharing as one of their biggest goals or challenges. And while 2/3 of learners report sharing their credential, more than half of those who aren't sharing their credential say they don't have any reason to do so, or at least they don't see any reason to do so. There's clearly an opportunity to educate those students on the value of sharing a credential once it's earned. And while 71% of issuers take the first step and send an email to award the credential, so you've earned this email, the majority of them stop there. Sadly, only 1 in 3 send a reminder to open the credential or share it. Moreover, like 44% of issuers report doing nothing to recognize or reward learners who do share their credentials online. But the thing to remember is learners have a lot on their plates, right? And if you think about your own life, we all have a lot on our plate. One email explaining how to share a credential probably isn't going to prompt action on the majority of your learners. The most successful campaigns are multiplying some of those touch points, and they do 4 things. They provide guidance on how learners can use their credential. They explain why they should share them, what those benefits are. They use learner engagement strategies like repeat touch points that encourage sharing. And then they engage and reward learners who do share their credentials online. And so by implementing like these learner engagement campaigns, credible customers have drove pretty significant improvement in learning engagement, program referrals, and revenue. So to pull out some examples, George Washington University, like they saw the value right away. Because a majority of its student population are working professionals, many of them are active on LinkedIn. Adding badges and certificates to their LinkedIn page is pretty impactful in sense that then their networks will see it, possibly engage, and then engage in George Washington University's programming. So they deployed a credential view reminder sent 1 week after the congratulations, here's your badge email, and a LinkedIn share reminder sent 1 month to remind students to share their credentials on LinkedIn. These two campaigns alone increased the university's LinkedIn profile ad rate by 133% and increased its LinkedIn share rate by a whopping 580%. So they obviously plan to do more campaigns at pinging students who get halfway through sharing their certificate program to push them to follow through, or even emailing past learners when new coursework rolls out and then help drive an increase in re-enrollment. And so that takes us to our third takeaway. The most successful programs not only provide guidance on how and why learners can use and share credentials, but also incorporate learner engagement strategies that encourage sharing. They also engage and reward learners who share their credentials online. All right, so we've got one last poll for you today as we shift gears to think about student retention, continuing to engage with learners after they've completed a course of study, right? So that's what we mean by retention. So if you are leveraging digital credentials at your institution, are you using them to direct learners to graduate, certificate, or executive education programs, or even spotlight alumni after they've done something with you? So I'll continue as the responses get moved in, and we'll see what speaks to this opportunity next. Laura, let's go on to the fourth insight. Perfect. The fourth insight we found is that similar to the disconnect between what learners were looking for when enrolling in courses and what issuers are providing, higher ed institutions are missing out on opportunities to retain and re-engage students after they complete a course. 94% of learners want additional course recommendations to help them achieve their career goals from the institutions they're working with. But 1 in 4 aren't taking any new courses because they don't know what to take next. And 84% of learners want to be included in an online directory or promoted some way for prospective employers, but only 35% of programs report offering this type of value add. So this tells us that education leaders like yourselves are missing an opportunity to meet learner expectations post-course completion to retain them and help them connect with future opportunities. So do we have the results for that last poll? Perfect. It looks like we have not a lot of people engaging with their learners after programs. So we do have some great opportunity, and some of the insights in that we're going to talk about here may help you. And then we do have 27% of people are engaging. So that is super exciting. I would love to hear, and maybe you could even put some comments in on how you engage with some of your learners after to share with some of your peers on this webinar. So What we suggest reviewing all of your existing courses and determining what the next step for your learners would be. So MIT Professional Education did that. They examined 50 of their program's top courses, then noted the course or certificate learners should aim to take next, and started including them in their You Earned Your Digital Credential email. So their team also provides personalized course recommendations, promoting their program. They use a Credible's recommendation feature for this, but they do it on their credential pages and then also throughout the full Credible network. Um, they also prominently display themselves at the top of a Credible's Course Finder site, which is a credential directory and course search platform. There's lots of them in the market. And in doing so, MIT better markets its courses to new and existing learners, generating additional program enrollment and revenue. So with recommendations, MIT Professional Education has generated over 5 million impressions with current and future learners, generating just under 19,000 additional program referrals for them. When we started working together, they had around 35% learners return rate. But now that they're making these types of recommendations and engagement strategies, they're over a 50% retainment level, with 50% taking additional courses from them. We also suggest meeting learners' expectations and helping alumni maximize their credentials utilizing an online directory. So spotlighting alumni in an online directory of credential holders gives them a competitive edge and in turn increases the value and ultimately demand for your credentials. So Wharton Executive Education built a Wharton Talent Network to showcase alumni who've earned credentials with a short description of their professional experience, work availability, links to their social media profiles, all listed within the directory for the individual credential earners. Employers then can come in and filter results by credentials or skills or even location on this highly qualified group of candidates for specific roles. So that takes us to takeaway number 4. Most successful issuers are more likely to make personalized recommendations based on which courses a student has taken. They also create additional learning and value and connect them with future opportunities by recognizing recipients in an online directory. So finally, and this is always my favorite thing to talk about because I'm a data nerd, and we found that many programs lack visibility into how to improve their programs. Um, when looking at program metrics, less than half of issuers track what content or courses learners are most engaged with, which learners are most engaged, what their course completion times are, where learners are dropping off. And only 54% of issuers track which learners complete a course, and 23% track which learners take additional courses. Um, and then only 13% of issuers are tracking program referrals from shared credentials. So without these insights, it's going to make it really hard to know what course content is or isn't working, and even harder to try to refine your program strategy to meet the market and your students' needs. So as a marketer, Miriam here, a MIT Professional Education team member, recognized that their certificate program could be a powerful tool to amplify MIT's exceptional network. To encourage learners to share their achievements, she needed to understand what was happening behind the scenes. So with these insights, she adjusted her marketing strategy to better support learner engagement and sharing. She and her team used Accredible's analytics to monitor their open rates, following up with students who hadn't yet opened their certificates. She tracked credential shares, engaging with students who post about their accomplishments on LinkedIn. And then she followed their credential referrals, determining which courses were most intriguing to potential learners. At the same time, she made it easy for potential learners to explore added courses, taking them straight from a student's credential LinkedIn post to their course catalog. And they worked with us to track all of these actions so that they can see how many people came in through Accredible digital credentials and then entered their lead pipeline so they could nurture these learners. Since shifting to digital credentials and optimizing the MIT professional education program, Miriam and her team have issued over 75,000 digital credentials and have hit a consistent 90% open rate, boosted their credential referrals by over 55% and increased their LinkedIn share rates by an incredible 280%. So this brings us to our final takeaway because these strategies do work. Successful issuers are more likely to have more sophisticated tracking, such as how many credentials are issued, their credential share rate. They track their referral traffic from credential shares and referral to new learner conversion rates. They'll know which learners are more engaged and where their learners are dropping off. But let this data nerd sort of plant a seed here. You don't need to measure everything to start with. Starting even on a single area of measurement to gain some insight and then iterate on top of that to optimize your program is better than not starting at all or trying to start with everything perfectly set up all at once. Perfect. So these are just a few of the takeaways from the 2024 State of Credential report. My colleague Laura will share the link to access the live guide. Otherwise, you could just head over to stateofcredentialing.com to dive in. And I definitely recommend that you take a deeper look into the report to find out more of what learners want and what most successful institutions are doing to grow their programs. So with that, I'm going to take a nice long breath. And I look forward to opening up and taking some of your questions.
Great. The questions will remain open, so please let us know if you have any questions for Rochelle about any of the content we've shared here today. Rochelle, one question that did come in around the online directory. Can you talk a little bit more about that, if that's a feature of Accredible or if that's a recommendation to take elsewhere?
Yeah, so Accredible definitely has an online directory. It is easy to get set up, white label directory that any type of institution can promote their credential earners online, where the learners are searchable by different program attributes, including your own custom attributes. So if there are things specific to your program that you want to make searchable, those are all easily available in the Accredible directory. There are obviously directories outside of the market. And when you're looking at building a directory, whether it is with Accredible using that tool or any others, some of the things that you should be looking for is the ease of use, the ability to find the right individuals and to promote based on your credentials, because the secondary purpose of holding an online directory, not only promoting and giving your learners exposure to employers and to whomever would be looking for them in the market, but it is also to push your brand and your programs out further into the market and to help provide credibility. So things like branding, things like like your own look and feel that connect and make sense within your credential programs, and having that interweave with everything else that you're promoting as a university becomes important.
Great, thank you. We have another question around the channels to which students can share their credentials. Does Credible have plans to allow students to share credentials on platforms like Instagram or Blue Sky?
Yeah, absolutely. It is something that we're highly focused on normally, but particularly in 2025, as some of the younger generations come up, and as we all shift through some of the different social platforms, we are expanding which platforms we support. Instagram being one of them, along with YouTube, we're exploring TikTok. So all of the different social platforms that are becoming more commonly used as social interactions start to expand even further are definitely top and center on our goal. So we'll definitely be seeing those coming up.
Great. Next question is around course recommendations, and we mentioned or recommended to make them as personalized or customized to the individual as possible. So what are some ways that you would recommend doing that?
Yeah, so there's a few ways. So I'm gonna the easy way through a Credible, and then some additional ways outside in the market so that everybody gets something out of this. Within a Credible ourselves, we have a recommendation engine that takes all of the metadata about your students and the credentials they've earned and your credentials and the skills they're looking to obtain, and algorithmically make recommendations and push those out so that the most relevant recommendations are being pushed out to students. That said, outside of that specific feature, what people running programs can do is also talk to your students. So you have a beautiful user base to find out with some of your alumni what courses have been most relevant after, which courses, or what did they do after taking your course. And then that will give you some guidance to manually make recommendations to your existing students or your prospective students that are coming in. You know your coursework a lot, in based on your course catalogs and based on availability. So just taking some of those next steps and putting them into the credentialing process and the credentialing life cycle will help you make some of those recommendations be a little bit more personalized, because they'll be based on the credentials at least someone's earning, if you can't utilize an engine that will do it algorithmically.
Excellent. We've got one more question, unless we hear from anyone else in the audience here, around just the value of the digital credential itself, of that badge, of that digital certificate. If we're seeing that students aren't engaging with a credential, or we're seeing that maybe people aren't finding them particularly valuable, what are some ways that we can motivate them to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So education of the learner through the whole process is super important to get learners to engage with your credentials. So having the professors or whomever is delivering the content, as part of that content delivery, making connection on how they can use what they're learning outside in the market and connecting that to posting their digital credential online. So if I'm learning about leadership opportunities in the course, having a professor tell me about how I can apply that to a role that I'm going to apply to, and how presenting that in the market is via my LinkedIn profile, and putting my credential that I'm going to earn from this class will show the world that I'm learning leadership skills. Like, that connection through the whole learning process is super important. The other thing is treating it like a campaign. So we talked a little bit about that in the webinar. I will admit, I almost never respond to the first email someone sends me. My inbox is very, very full. As exciting as it is to get a credential, sometimes once you take your course, you're like, oh, I'm done, until you need that next job. But if you reach back out and set to the learner and set it up more like a campaign. So if they haven't opened their credential a week out or a month out, send them a reminder. And in that content, provide them with information about the benefits for sharing, that it will promote them as an individual, that they can showcase the skills. You may even want to list out some of those skills in the email so that they understand what they're able to promote out in the market. And those constant touch points and the repeat of the benefit that you are offering them a lot of the times will help encourage students to push and engage in their credentials over time.
Great. I believe that is it for Q&A. So I will turn the mic back over to our wonderful host.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again to Rochelle and Laura for such interesting insights. And thank you all for joining us today and for all your brilliant questions and interactions. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But if you missed anything, don't worry, because the recording will be available in the postcoms and on our website. So thank you once again, and goodbye.